guys, thank you for joining me. I'm honored to have a chance to visit with you guys, because two people that I certainly look up to and admire in this profession, and you guys have been doing this together for 35 years almost. Does it even seem fathomable that it's been that long?
Well, no, I think sometimes we kind of talk about it and we think of things that happened 35 years ago and it seems like it was yesterday, and then other times, it does seem like, I think it's just like life, it kind of seems, certainly seems like the full 30-some years, but other times we can, we'll talk about things seem like it was just yesterday.
I think it was, didn't they have a deal for us on the 20th anniversary?
Yeah.
That's already 15 years ago, and it does not seem possible.
Right.
But you're always looking forward to the next season and the next game, and so the years go by, and the next thing you know, it's piled up to 35 years, and it's hard to imagine.
I mean, if you guys rank in the top 5 as the color and play-by-play guys that do all the games. I mean, in the entire country of Division I basketball, and Kevin, I think you that does every game. I think you're number 1 right now. What does that mean to you guys? Is that cool, or is that something you really even think about or care much about?
Well, we've just always done it, I suppose, so I don't really think about it too much.
Sure.
It's just kind of what we do, and I had no idea that we've been, one of the longer teams in the country. I had no idea, but like Kevin says, the years just kind of go by and add up, and every once in a while I kind of stop and go, wow, it has been that long. But it's great doing both. Obviously, it's doing football and basketball is huge, and we both like doing it so much and kind of feel so comfortable together that the years do go by quickly. That's for sure.
I would say that from my standpoint, I know Dave feels the same way. We're so honored to be doing this franchise, and it is a franchise, and to be able to do this to the state of Wyoming, that's far more than how many years we've done it,
right,
or what list we're on, but we're just proud to do it, and it's very dear to us.
Obviously, you made your storied Hall of Fame career doing play-by-play. Is that something you've always, when you were getting ready to get in the business, is this something you always wanted to do, or did you kind of quote-unquote stumble into it? Or give me some background of how you got into this, I guess.
Well, I was a sports geek growing up, played everything, wasn't very good at much of it, but was involved and loved sports. And I think I realized when I was falling asleep at night listening to games on radio, I knew early on, I think about 8 or 9 years old, boy, that seems like a lot of fun. It'd be great to do. And my idols were announcers and athletes and stuff. So you had a chance to actually do a little play-by-play for the first time in 9th grade, and I think that was probably the first time that I knew that it was what I wanted to do. And
right. Who were some of the announcers or even athletes that you kind of idolized that made you think, yeah, this is what I want to do?
Well, I grew up on the West Coast, so I grew up listening to Vin Scully and Chick Hearn, which are who are two of the all-time greats, and then the local announcers in the San Diego area. There were some really good ones, Al Coupe, and these are guys that you probably don't know, but and Kurt was such a big. Kurt Gagliardi was such a big influence on my life. Ironically, he ended up hiring me in 1984 here at the University of, to do Wyoming games. So, but way back then, I knew early on that this is what I'd like to do. So I count myself as one of the really lucky ones that I've been doing all these years exactly what I've always wanted to do. Really, really fortunate.
Kevin, you've done so much here at the university, from sports information and writing, and you're an administrator now, and also doing radio. I mean, all the things that you've done for this university and just done in sports media, where does being a color commentator rank, and just how much work goes into it, how difficult is it? You guys make it sound very easy, very fluid, but how difficult is it, I guess?
Well, it sounds fluid because of him, number one. But I would say that I've always enjoyed writing, and that's what I thought I was going to do for my career. Like Dave, I went to bed at night listening to games, because in Cheyenne we could get a lot of Major League Baseball broadcasts, and I always thought that was an awesome profession, but I'd never dreamed that I would even be a part of it. So I fell into it literally, because I was doing color only on the road games, and I was doing for Larry Berleffi. I've worked with 2 Hall of Famers, by the way. Not many people get to do that, but it just kind of evolved. I would only do road games because I needed to do my other job here at home. And then as things moved along and evolved, I did both. But there's nothing more fun than doing these games. I can't imagine anything that's more fun than that, and getting to know the kids. We have some long seasons, but we have some great seasons, and it's all good. It's a blast to do, and I think that, you know, I don't think you could ask for a better job than these kind of jobs.
Right. When you guys, you know, became a duo, whether it's football or even basketball, obviously there's teamwork involved, and there's, you know, getting to know the other person and how their style is, and vice versa. What was that like, guys? Was that difficult to get used to how Dave calls a game, or when, you know, to have Kevin chime in when needed for color? What was that like, or was that pretty seamless, I guess?
It was very seamless. I don't remember any. I think from the very first time we sat down and did a game together, it just seemed so natural, and we're very comfortable with each other. You know, he's like an old Wyoming sweatshirt. He's very comfortable, and I feel comfortable around him. So it's, I think from the get-go, I just don't ever remember any, you know, feeling uncomfortable or worried about the way it goes. Every once in a while we'll step on each other, but, you know, we've done probably 2,000 broadcasts, whatever it's been together. Right. So, you know, that happens. But I don't know, as far as feeling, you know, developing that comfort on air sound, it was just natural from the first time I sat down with Kevin.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I do think that I don't know if there's a class on color, but there probably isn't. But it's all with the play-by-play guy, and if the play-by-play guy gives you the opportunity to say something, then that's when you go after it. And Dave has always been awesome with giving me an opportunity to say what I might have on my mind. And if I don't say anything right, then he just moves right along. And I think it's probably difficult at times for somebody who does games by themselves to then bring in a color guy. But Dave didn't ever seem to have that problem, and I know he did games by himself a lot, but it's much appreciated by a color guy to have that little window, if needed, to step in and say something. And I think that's where he's so good at it, and we, through the years, know exactly how that is. And we do. He doesn't step on me, but I step on him sometimes. And that, of all the things that happen, that's the one thing that I really try not to do, because people are listening to Dave Walsh and they want to hear what's going on, and it's not my place to step on his parade. And so, but I do that every once in a while, you know, as hard as I try not to. But in the main, we just it's just a great working relationship, and it seems to flow well.
Did you guys do like simulated games or practice games before you guys did your first game together, or did you just, games coming up, here we go, let's roll? Or did you guys do a lot of pre-work before this long and storied partnership?
We never rehearsed.
We never did.
One time. We never
did not rehearse. Maybe we should have.
Yeah, maybe we should have. No, we just sat down, and I think that Kevin had, well, he'd been around, play-by-play guy, knew what the radio biz was all about, knew what a radio basketball play-by-play broadcast was all about, and understood what goes into it very much. He worked with others, like you said, worked with Larry. Right. I worked with Larry too, so we, you know, we drew a lot from him, both of us. But I don't know, like I said, it was just kind of a comfort factor right from the first time we ever sat down. Now, we had talked to one another and gotten to know each other, of course, before we ever did a broadcast together. And I think we kind of immediately became friends, and I think that carries over on our in our broadcasts as well, which I think is important. And we just seem to have always gotten along so well, and have a great deal of respect for one another. I think that's critical, and that was always something that just kind of happened right from the start.
You know, I never really worried about it. we just kind of sat in and started going, and it was comfortable at the start. I did worry a little bit when I started football, because I had never done football color, and when we started doing it together back in the day, I stayed awake that night before the first game, thinking about that. Even though we've worked together for a long time in basketball, I still was pretty nervous about that. And you know, Dave made it to where you're not nervous about it, and you just do it.
Would never have known.
Right.
I mean, honestly,
But
I thought our first football broadcast together were like we'd been, and I remember talking after that first season, after those first few games, you know, Kevin, this is like we've been doing this together forever, and it was.
And it was, because we really had been working together
Yeah.
for a long time. It was just, to me, it was something different for me personally. So, but it worked out fine.
Do you remember the first basketball game you guys did together? Do you still remember that?
Oh boy,
That's
do
okay.
you?
Well, I remember our first games together, and I remember what games. It was interesting because it was such the start and the beginning of a great era for for Cowboy basketball, because my first year here doing play-by-play and with working games with Kevin was Fennis Dembo and Eric Lechner's first year. They were all freshmen, and all that was kind of starting, and it was a very exciting time, and not only in basketball but in football as well. Cowboys were winning back then. Were winning championship '87 and '88, so very soon into it. But our very first games together, I remember those games. But again, it was just like I remember after our first games together, we'd look at each other and I'd go, "This is like we've been doing this forever." I mean, it's just a natural, and felt good about it right from the very first moment.
Obviously, Dave, one of the biggest monikers that people know about, you know, the score. Oh, the score. Where did that come from? Do you remember how that started? Is that something that just came and after just a big game and a big finish? Talk to me about how that started.
Well, I don't recall. I heard it somewhere. I don't think there's any doubt that we play-by-play guys, we use things that we've heard before, or maybe have heard some just in passing. I don't recall hearing it being used on the air, but it just a term, you know, kind of something. And I just remember doing that for the first time. But I by no means would I say that I was the very first to ever say something like that. I'm sure it's been out there, but I don't know. I just kind of glommed onto it. And the only reason I've kept doing it, really, it feels natural, but people came up to me from the first time I did it and said, yeah, they really liked it. So.
Do you remember the first time you used it?
I did it doing high school games back in Brawley,
Even high school?
California. Oh
Wow.
yeah, you know, and I did it at Weber State, and it was just something that kind of carried on. But I'm sure way back when, you know, like I say, I did first play ninth grade, but listening on the radio or somewhere, I probably heard that and thought it sounded good. It just came out, you know.
Armani of analysis. I just love when I'm able to hear you guys. I just think that's the coolest thing. Where did that come from, Dave? Is that just an analogy just that popped into your head? I mean, where did that come from?
Well, it kind of comes about. Kevin is the best dresser I've ever known, I think everyone would agree. And it just kind of fit. You know, he was an analyst, and I don't know, Kevin. It just popped out, just like the Electric Man or anything else. You know, the Wizard of Ord, or whatever nickname or thing the double A, you know, it just kind of popped out and seemed to fit.
Right. You like the Armani of analysis?
Well, heck yeah. I mean, Dave always has great nicknames. He's always been able to do that for our kids, especially. But you know, when he first said it, and you know, it kind of took me by surprise, of course. But I said, well, that's fine with me. You know, he could have called me many things, probably I'd have been fine with. But yeah, that was cool.
How long have you, I mean, as long as I can remember, you've been using it. How long has that been?
I don't think it happened right away, but it's probably been 25 years, 25 years, I suppose, yeah.
What are some of the most, obviously, you called so many games, and I know there's been some, but what are some of the most memorable games or moments that you guys have experienced together, at least in your opinions, that stand out to you, good or bad even?
kind of love this question because we got to go back and forth. I'll name one, and then you'll say, "Oh yeah, how about this one?" And then we, but there have been so many. If you take football for example, I tend to remember the bowl victories, of course, and those have been fairly recent. But the beating BYU in Provo in 1987, those the Cowboys were on their way to an undefeated conference. It was Paul Roach's first year as coach. I remember that win. But we had a sellout here against UTEP, and it was on CBS in 1988. The 88 win when Randy Welniak led the Cowboys back down in Colorado Springs. He scored 31 in the fourth quarter. Just games like that. I mean, we can. I'm kind of going chronologically because there have been so many as we've moved along here. They've just been sensational.
I think one of the most fun times for me, we had the opportunity to do the WAC baseball tournament in Hawaii one year, and we didn't get to do baseball very often, but we had a really good team, and we got to go over and do baseball, which I don't know. For me, I think that would be one of the most fun things to do is baseball.
Blast.
And we had such a good time, and we had a really good team with a bunch of great guys, and that's always a great memory for me. I'd say the Sweet 16 season was a huge, to be playing in Seattle against Vegas in the Sweet 16. It was really awesome. It was just you were in awe of this is how far we've gotten with the Wyoming program, and getting there, the road on beating UCLA and Virginia. That was a great time, I would say. But I love that baseball. Boy, that was a great time.
It was great. And of course, we were both in Australia and worked on the first ever American football game played on the continent in 1985. Kevin mentioned the Sweet 16. The year before that was very memorable. That was the NIT year for the Cowboys, and here we are back in New York City playing
Madison Square Garden.
In Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, that was
Did
awesome.
2 games there. So, just go on and on. I think sometimes we sit back and think of the venues that we've done games in, like Florida and Georgia between the hedges and all, just all those venues. But gosh, over the course of time, so many. We could go on and on. Pretty good.
What are some of the venues? I mean, you mentioned, you've been to Madison Square Garden, you've been between the hedges, but what are some of the venues you've been to that, and I'm not trying to disparage them, but that were, a little shady, maybe a little run down or a little primitive, so to speak? What I'm sure through the years you've experienced that. What are some of those that stand out that you're like, wow, I'm really doing a game here?
I'm anxious to hear what you say, because I have one came to my mind.
You have one, yeah. Just go ahead. There's been some.
Well,
there's been some shady.
Martin Simmons was
yeah.
one of the all-timers because it was a high school gymnasium, and we were up at the top of the high school gymnasium, just like it was back in the high school day, and so that was an interesting. We had one. I think it was the Southern Illinois that was, or Rice, one of the
Rice
almost over the court. And so you had a hard time seeing numbers because the press box was that far out, cantilevered over the basketball court.
Evansville was kind of like
Evansville
that. We had to climb up a little ladder to get to the press box.
Wow.
We're looking straight down the court, and I remember we said on the air at Rice, it'd be nice if the players were wearing those water polo caps where they have the numbers on there.
That's how far out it
that
was.
would have been good.
Wow.
Because we couldn't. But yeah, there have been those. I tend to remember the places like, Knoxville, Tennessee, when the place is packed, and watch out the back and see them coming down Manning Row, or at Texas A&M where they join arm and they rock back and forth, and you're on the 7th floor of the press box, and you can feel the press box moving. Just places like that, I think, are probably
many great ones.
Yeah.
The Nashville venue when we played that year, we played Tennessee in Nashville. That was it was a Titan stadium, so everything's first class. But that was really a special place in terms of the good side of it.
We've also done games, the old LA Coliseum, so there's kind of the old venues too, classic old venues.
And sometimes the biggest places aren't the best places, and I think Southern Cal was a good example of that. We played in the sports arena, I think.
Yeah.
And,
Big old building.
Big old the arena in San Diego. Was it the sports arena?
Yeah,
as
San
well?
Diego Sports Arena.
That's
before,
bad
yeah.
news.
Mhm.
Bad news. We played hockey in there, so it was cold,
Right.
and nobody was there. It was a big cavernous place. That was a tough play. You know, San Jose football is kind of tough these days because they've got an antiquated press box, and so that. But most of the places nowadays, pretty nice.
What's it like? I mean, obviously, you know, football and basketball, the game's evolved a lot over the years. But, you know, even though, you know, court's the same length, basket's the same height and stuff, but how has the game changed, and how has that kind of changed the way you call games? Or has it changed much from today to when you first were doing it in the mid-'80s or anything? Or, you know, talk to me about that. Has that changed a lot, or has it changed?
Well, the game, it's basketball. If you want to talk about the game itself has changed immensely. We were doing games together when the three-point shot came into effect. Personally, I think the three-point shot has changed the game dramatically in so many ways. We were doing games together before the shot clock when they used to hold the ball, and we did some 25 to 22 games, you know, games like that. So I think just the very rules that have changed in college basketball has obviously changed the way we do it. I think I did a couple of years before I came to Wyoming doing pro basketball, up and down, quick pace. Well, I think the college game has picked up the pace a little bit, just generally over the years. But I think just the rules changes and the game itself has changed so much that, certainly it's changed the way we go about things.
Yeah, I agree. The rules have changed a lot of it. We had two officials when we were doing games. Now there's an extra set of eyes, and now we have to replay everything. That's been a huge difference in the game, and I think the way the rules have changed, as Dave says, has changed the way people play the game and the way they go about it. I would say the replay has been for me, I think for both of us, it's very frustrating, and it takes a lot more time, and it disrupts the flow of the game, and we got to be talking about something in that meantime, by the way. But I don't think, you know, football, we have the wishbone, then we have the passing game, then we have the spread, and maybe the wishbone will come back. It changes, but it doesn't really change. You got to block and tackle and make plays. But we've seen a lot of in vogue, out of vogue, in vogue offenses, defenses. So in that regard, but you still got to do the basic things. You still got to put the ball in the basket. You still got to play defense. But officiating, I think, and the rules of the game have changed both sports probably.
Sure. It's the million-dollar question, guys, is how long are we going to continue to hear and listen to Dave and Kevin on the radio doing Wyoming Cowboy football and basketball? Is that, I ask the question, you know, do you have an answer?
We'll probably be slumped over at the broadcast position, and you guys will notice a couple days later.
Funny, I think we're both this way. Honestly, we're kind of a lot like a player or a coach, or you know, I know there's a game tonight, and that's my next goal, job. So I kind of take them like that.
Sure.
At this point.
Right.
Now, if you would ask me that question 10 years ago, I said, well, I'm going to go at least another 10 years.
Yeah.
But it's getting to the point now where it really is just
Game by game?
well, sure, and I think, you know, you kind of reevaluate, at least in my case, reevaluate at the end of the season and say, hey, is it time or is it not? You know?
Is it still enjoyable? I'm sorry, Kevin. Is it still enjoyable though, guys? From the first day you guys started doing this to this and all the games and all the places, is it still as enjoyable and fun than it was from day one, or is it, you know, with everything else that's going on in the world and technology, that it's become kind of a grind for you?
Well, it's not a grind in any way. I think when you hear the countdown in your headset, and he starts, as he always does, no matter how he feels during the day, I don't even know. But when he starts that broadcast with the enthusiasm that he does, it's a blast. It's so much fun. It gets you charged up. You couldn't help but be charged up, you know. And so it's a lot of fun. Some games aren't fun. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Because we wear and bleed brown and gold. So Some of them aren't very much fun. Many are, and all that. But it's still exciting to hear him start the game. And here we go. And you know, it's. I think about this every once in a while. It's like 3 hours of live us talking, and you know, don't screw up. You know what I mean? So it's a real challenge, and it's really exciting.